I'm pleased to have the opportunity to address the issues raised by the member for Swan, who clearly doesn't understand the way that aviation legislation works in this country. One of the things about the first item of the motion before the Parliament says that it speaks about the recent decision of the WA government to grant approval for a third runway at Perth Airport. It's actually the federal government that are responsible for approving airport-related activities under the legislation, both the Commonwealth Airports Act 1996 as amended and also the Commonwealth Environment Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act. So this member is a part of the government that he's trying to walk away from the responsibility that the federal government has for its legislation and for the impact. The decision as to whether the new runway is built rests entirely with the Commonwealth Government. And before Perth Airport can proceed with any significant development on what is Commonwealth land, it's Commonwealth land, it must first prepare a major development plan and submit it to the Commonwealth Minister for Infrastructure and Transport for approval. Now, Perth Airport released an MDP for the proposed new runway on the 31st of May for 60 business days of public comment. The consultation process will close on the 24th of August. Subject to actual demand and airline commercial agreements, the runway is likely to open at some point between 2023 and 2028, after 4 years of construction. As required by the reforms put in place by the former Labor government, the MDP contains a draft airspace management plan which shows indicative flight paths. Before the aviation white paper and our amendments, this didn't even occur. The final design of the flight paths will be consistent with the approved major development plan. The work will be finalised by Air Services in the 3 years leading up to the opening of the runway. And what then happens as a result of our legislation is that every 5 years there's a review of every airport's flight paths and environmental impact with community consultation, including the community consultation groups that were established by legislation introduced by myself as the Minister. That's why those processes are taking place. Just like the noise amelioration plans are under legislation actually of the Howard government, which have defined categories for either acquisition or noise insulation, which are applied to every airport around the country. So there's automatic insulation for homes once a certain noise level is given, and there's acquisition of homes once a noise level is given. Now, I certainly understand there's a need to balance the needs of the aviation sector with the rights of the local communities that live around our airports. Airports are not islands, and that's why we had the National Aviation White Paper, the first ever, of which the 34 recommendations, many of them, went to improving community consultation and the oversight of airport developments. The former government had brickworks and all sorts of activity going on at Perth Airport rather than prioritising aviation activity at the airport that is so important for the Perth economy. Prohibited developments incompatible with aviation use on federal airport sites unless exceptional circumstances exist as one of the reforms that we put in place. We obligated federal airports to submit more detailed master plans. We introduced the major development plan trigger that will be activated by any development with a significant community impact, regardless of size or cost. Previously, when I became the Minister, I remember going to Melbourne Airport. They had a new whole operation opening that hadn't been through any consultation process because they managed to break it up into smaller projects so they didn't meet the trigger. Well, what we did was ensure that this community consultation will take place, just like we ensured that we established the Aircraft Noise Ombudsman, just like we outlawed older, noisier aircraft flying in the major Australian airports. Chapter 2 aircraft had continued to fly willy-nilly over residential communities before we took action.